Hello everyone. So we are here with the part 2 for the inferential statistics. Right? So we did till interval estimation. Now we are here with interval estimation, the first term, that is confidence interval. Now what is meant by confidence interval? So confidence interval ke liye we have the thing that suppose you are defining some data and you are confident that 95%, right, 95% case में क्या होगा, we are going to have the data in between. That is, suppose I say that you are going to get 40%, correct, 40% marks in the exam, correct. You said कि I will get 40% marks in the exam, then you are 95% confident that you are going to get 40% marks in that exam. 95% confidence level का मतलब क्या है? 95% confidence level का मतलब है that is you are going to say that I can get between 35% and 45%. 5% का you have margin of error. That is what we mean, right? So we can take another example also for this. Suppose एक इलेक्शन सर्वे हुआ एंड एग्जिट पोल वाज देयर. सो उन्होंने बोला कि यस दैट पर्सन इज गोइंग टू गेट 30% ऑफ द वोट, करेक्ट. सो मार्जिन ऑफ एरर उन्होंने कितना दिया, 5% दिया, और कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल कितना हो गया उनका, 95%. तो उसका मतलब क्या है 95% कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल का, दैट इज दे आर 95% श्योर that the candidate is going to receive the votes between 25% and 35%. 5% का error है, so 30 से 5% on the left side and 5% on the right side we go. So we say 25% to 35% के बीच में उसको vote मिलेगा. And how much are we confident? 95% we are confident for this. So confidence interval, confidence level, margin of error, they all are related together. So margin of error क्या describe करता है, accuracy of the sampling method, और confidence level describe करता है उसकी uncertainty, correct. That is important word. So confidence level explains its uncertainty and margin of error describes the accuracy of the sampling method. So we are going to compute interval estimation from this. That is, we are again going to give the intervals. So margin of error, as I told you in the last also, part also, कि आपके पास middle value है and you are moving to the left side and the right side of it, correct. Suppose you have x bar mu here. So if, as I said, this will be what, x bar minus e, and this will be what, x bar plus E. So this is margin of error E. So margin of error on the left side, margin of error on the right side. Now suppose I have taken a very simple thing here. Suppose that a 95% confidence interval states that population mean is greater than 100 and less than 300. Now how will you interpret this statement? If someone says this, then आपको क्या समझ में आया? How are you going to interpret it? कि what does he or she mean by this? Now see this figure here. So 95% का मतलब क्या है? This is your x bar, correct? So this is your lower limit and this is your upper limit, correct? So 95% confidence interval states that mean is between 100 and 300. किसके बीच में है? 100 से ज़्यादा है and less than 300 है. He is sure that 95% is going to happen, that the mean is going to be between 100 and 300. That's a simple inference that you can have from the statement. So 95% confidence interval states that population mean is greater than 100 and less than 300. So this is what you interpret from there, correct. Now interval estimation में we have few formulae, very simple formulae that we use for calculating the margin of error and for giving the values. Now let's go for it. So here we have the first formula for you. Suppose confidence level you have, the most common confidence level that we study is 90%, 95% and 99%. That's important for you, correct. ये standard रहते हैं, mostly 95% we go. So 90%, 95% and 99%. Now this is alpha. I gave you one word in the last one, that is the significance level. That is the level of significance. So here what do we mean? 0.10, that is 10%. Now here what do we have? 0.05, that is 5%. And here what we will have? 1%, 99% है आपका. So 0.01. So now 10%, 5%, 1%. That will be basically what? The level of significance. Now 1 minus alpha will become what? If I just go for it. So 1 minus alpha will be simply, अगर ये 10% है, so what will it be? 90%. What will this become? 95%. And what will this become? 99%. Correct? So alpha is your level of significance that we call it. Correct? So here we have. Now here corresponding to these we have alpha by 2 z alpha by 2. Now what is it? ये standard values हैं that you calculate. So पहले हम एक छोटा सा कॉलम बना लेते हैं सिर्फ alpha by 2 का. Correct? That is half of alpha. Explain you in a very simple way. So 0.10 का half क्या हो जाएगा? 0.05. What will be the half of 0.05? Just go for it. 0.025. And 0.01 का half क्या हो जाएगा? 0.005. Correct? Now Z alpha by 2. Now for this we have a table which gives you the value of the Z alpha by 2 and all. So we will be getting those values in the exam. Correct? So 90% के लिए क्या value होता है हमारा? 1.645. What is the value for 95%? 1.960. And what's the value for 99%? 2.576. These are all standard values. Correct? So confidence level agar 90%, then level of significance goes for 0.10, and 1 minus alpha will be what? zero point 0.9. Alpha by 2 will be 0.05, and corresponding to that we have 1.649. अभी alpha by 2 का क्या logic है? That is, suppose you have again a bell shaped curve. Correct? Now this is what you have, the mu or the x bar. So alpha by 2 means half of alpha here and half of alpha here. आप अगर 10% you are having the level, so 5% will go here and 5% will go to this side, both sides, इसलिए वो alpha by 2 हो जाता है. टोटल आपका 10% ही है. That is, alpha, your level of significance is 10%, but it is going to get divided on both the sides. Half here, half there. सेम वे इफ यू गो फॉर 95%, तो उसका हाफ हाफ कितना होता है हमारे पास? 0.05 फुल है, 5% का हाफ 2.5, 2.5%. So that goes for here 0.025 here and 0.025 here. So this is what we have for alpha by 2. That is, your value is going to get divided. आपका लेवल कम नहीं हो रहा, लेवल remains the same, but it is going to get divided on both the sides. This is what we have for confidence level. Now for margin of error, we use this values. So margin of error के लिए what's the simple formula for calculation? So margin of error goes for again z alpha by 2 की वैल्यू से, क्योंकि हमारा कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल कितना है उसके अकॉर्डिंग वी विल हैव द वैल्यूज फॉर मार्जिन ऑफ एरर ऑल्सो. अब हमारा लेवल ऑफ सिग्निफिकेंस कितना है उसके अकॉर्डिंग वी आर गोइंग टू हैव फॉर मार्जिन ऑफ एरर. So what is it, the simple formula? Z alpha by 2 into the deviation upon root n. This is the formula for calculation of margin of error. Very simple formula. Z alpha by 2 का value, I would prefer to learn these three values because this can come for MCQ. These are standard values. Otherwise, it will be given in the question also. No worries for that. So 90%, 95%, 99. अगर numerical है तो दिया होगा. Otherwise, for MCQs, better to remember also. Right? So margin of error का formula क्या है calculation का? Z alpha by 2, that is these three values depending on the confidence level values, right? And then we have here standard deviation upon root n. Now let's take a question for interval estimation. Suppose I have given you here the average height of a random sample of 400 adult males of a city as 175 centimeter. Now standard deviation कितना दिया है आपको? 40 दिया है. So you have to find two cases for 90% confidence interval population mean and for 95%. दोनों के लिए आपको निकालना है. So let's do one and the second case one by one. Correct? So now let's start with it. So we have been given that random sample of 400 adults. So 400 adults means n is your 400. Now average height, तो आपको मीन कितना दिया गया है? 175 सेंटीमीटर. and standard deviation is how much given to you? 40. So we will use the formula for margin of error and then we will find it for 90% confidence interval. Right? So now let's use it. So let's write the details first. N is 400. Then we have mean as 175 for the sample. Then we have standard deviation as 40. So standard deviation is 40. Now population standard deviation is, say we are using this symbol. अगर sample standard deviation होता we would have used S. Remember it. So now 90% confidence interval. So what's the formula for margin of error? Z alpha by 2 standard deviation upon root n. Now here the sample is 400, right? So n we are using here. So now z alpha by 2 for 90% confidence interval. Already I have given you the table कि 90% के लिए कितना value होता है. So for 90% what's the value? 1.645, that's standard value. 40 upon root 400. So what will you get? 1.645 into 40 upon 20, which gives you the answer as 0, 9, 2, and 3. So that's your margin of. Now let's find the interval for this. So for interval, what do we have? We have been given mean as 175, right? So mean is given as 175. So it's your mean. So we will add and subtract margin of error. So margin of error को हम add और subtract करेंगे mean में से. So what will you get? The answer is 175 minus 3.290 and 175 plus 3.290. So that will be your confidence interval for 90%. Right? Between these two values, you are going to get the average height. So what will you get? So on subtracting, we get here 0, here we get 0, 1, and then we get 7, and then we get this, right? So this is how we go on. Now this we will get this. Now we add up, so we get 178.290. So that will be your final answer. So this is how do we solve these questions just based on one simple formula of margin of error. So this is what you have to remember. And remember here you are given population standard deviation that we use in the formula, and n is the sample size that is given to you. Correct? So this is how we can find the interval. Now same question if we solve for 95%. So for 95%, what will be the difference? Z alpha by 2. Formula will be same, but Z alpha by 2 value will change. So margin of error we will find first. Now what will be the value? 1.96 for 95%. Rest of the values will remain the same. So I'm just writing it directly. So what will you get? 2, 9 and 3.92. So that will be a little bit difference in that. So for that, now let's calculate. So again, we are going to add and subtract margin of error for the mean. So your mean will be taken as 175 again. We will add and subtract margin of error to this. So if I subtract 3.92, what will I get? 171.08, and if I add it, I get 178.92. So this is for both the percentage 90% and 95%. Mostly ये दो percentage आते हैं exam में, and you have to use a very simple formula. Right, now let's move on to the next question. Now the monthly sales of a shop are normally distributed with a standard deviation of rupees 900, and a statistical study says in the last 9 months has found a confidence interval for the mean of monthly sales with extremes of 4663 and 5839. So इसमें आपको इंटरवल गिवन है. So it's a different question. तो आपको इंटरवल गिवन है, आपको ये थ्री प्रॉब्लम, आपको ये टू पार्ट्स में सॉल्व करना है. क्या निकालना है? पहले तो आपको मीन निकालना है, आपको पहले म्यू निकालना है. एक्सट्रीम वैल्यूज हमें गिवन है. सो बेसिकली व्हाट इज गिवन टू यू? 4663 एंड 5839. एक आपको गिवन है म्यू माइनस मार्जिन ऑफ एरर विच इज 4663. एक आपको गिवन है म्यू प्लस मार्जिन ऑफ एरर विच इज 5839. सो अगर हमें अभी मीन निकालना है, दैट्स द फर्स्ट पार्ट. वी हैव टू फाइंड एवरेज सेल्स ओवर द टाइम पीरियड. सो व्हाट वी आर गोइंग टू डू, वी आर सिंपली गोइंग टू सॉल्व दीज टू साइमल्टेनियस इक्वेशंस. बहुत सिंपल सा है. So basically what you are going to do, you are going to add the two equations. So 2 mu is 4663 plus 5839. So mu will be the average of the two values. Very simple. It's simple for MCQ also. If in MCQ also you get, simply you have to find the mean of the two values. So what we will get? We will get the value of mu, right? On solving it as Just add it. 9 3 12, then 6 3 9, then 8 6 we get 5 here, and then we get this. So if I solve it, what do I get? 4 5 2 5 1. So that's your value of average sales. That's the first answer, right? This is what we get. Now for the second part, what is the confidence level for this interval? So basically you have to find z alpha by 2 ka value. Now from 5 to 5 1, you have to find margin of error also. So for finding margin of error, right? So what we can do, 5 to 5 1 ka difference with 4663, or you can do other way around, 5839 minus 5251. This will give you margin of error. So now we get here 8, and we get here 8, and we get here 5. So 588 is your margin of error. So let's use the formula for margin of error now. So z alpha by 2 we don't know, that is what we have to find, and then standard deviation upon root n. Now what is the standard deviation given to you? 900. What is your n? 9 months, right? So let's put these values. So 588 z alpha by 2 we have to find. So 900 upon root 9. So z alpha by 2 we can simply find by dividing 588 with 300. So what will I get? I'll get 1.96. That is all z alpha by 2. So reverse now you have to go. So z alpha by 2 अगर 1.96 है तो कितना परसेंट कॉन्फिडेंस लेवल हुआ हमारा? 95%. So the values, three values that I have given to you, they are very important. And mostly we get in 90% questions, we get 95%. So just remember that value for MCQs also and for solving the questions also. So these are very simple questions, 1 or 2 mark ke liye, they are really good questions which can come in the exam. Right? Now let's take some more example just to understand the confidence in a better way. Right? So a 95% confidence interval for the particular mean was reported to be 152 to 160, and standard deviation is 15. Now you have to find n. So same formula hai, so different form types of questions are here so that you can understand how to find different variables. So standard deviation is 15 given to you. Again, mu plus e is 160 and mu minus e is given 152. So you can easily find margin of error as well as mean from these equations. So if I just add them, 2 mu is equal to this. So what will be your mean? 156. So this is your mean. So what's your margin of error? Margin of error will be 4. Right? Now let's use the formula for margin of error. So z alpha by 2, correct? Then we have standard deviation upon root n. So Z is 95% confidence level, which is 1.96. Standard deviation is given 15 and root n is coming this, right? We have to find, correct? Now margin of error is 4, correct? So we have to find n. Now let's move in. So what do we get here? 1.96 into root into 15 upon 4 will be your root n. Correct? Now let's move in. So if I just do it, so 0.44. Correct? So what do I get now? After solving it and multiplying, 7.35. So what will be your n? Square of 7.35. So what do you get? 54.0225. So approximately 54 is your sample space. So one formula is there only, that is margin of error. Values for the 90% and 95% confidence level, they are important. You can find standard deviation, you can find n, you can find alpha, everything. Right? So this is what we have for interval estimation. Correct? So this is a very simple topic. I hope you all have understood it well. Now let's take one very simple term, that is standard error of mean along with this. So what is this standard error of mean? So when we take a sample from a population, so we pick up one of the many samples. So some will have the same means, some will have the different means, that is obvious, right? So standard error of mean क्या होता है? How much dispersion there is likely to be samples mean compared to the population mean. कितना हमारा डिफरेंस आ रहा है सैंपल मीन में और पॉपुलेशन मीन में, दैट इज स्टैंडर्ड एरर ऑफ द मीन. So it measures the standard deviation of sampling distribution about the mean. So it has a very simple formula which you have been using. So sometimes if they give you standard error of mean, So it is nothing but standard deviation upon root n, which you have used in the formula of margin of error. So ये छोटा सा formula है which is given the book also. So this is the term standard error of mean, which gives you the difference between the population mean and the sample means. Right, कितना dispersed है आपका डेटा, कितना difference है दोनों में. So small standard of एरर ऑफ मीन है आपके पास, इसका मतलब आपका पॉपुलेशन मीन और सैम्पल मीन क्लोज टू ईच अदर है, दे आर ऑलमोस्ट द सेम. करेक्ट. और अगर हमारे पास लार्ज एसईएम आता है, दैट इज लार्ज स्टैंडर्ड एरर ऑफ मीन, देन इट मीन्स दे इज गोइंग टू बी लॉट ऑफ वेरिएशन इन पॉपुलेशन मीन एंड sample mean. Correct. So this is what we have. So if you have liked it, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you everyone.